All right, I think this is probably most of the people. The topic for this session is from this book by Duffy Robinson, Building a Youth Ministry That Builds Disciples. And I think there's things we can do as we work with young people that draws them into a desire to becoming more and more like Christ. And before we start talking about some of that, I want to talk a little bit about have some discussion questions, and I want to hear your responses. I do have a portion where I'll kind of put out some ideas there, but just to start off with, what is discipleship? Is this important? Why or why not? So how would you define discipleship? What does it look like, or what are the things that, what is it? Discussion only works if you respond. Okay, being a student. Anything else?
Well, a disciple is someone who learns, or is a student of someone. So discipleship would be getting people to be students of Jesus.
Okay. In our setting, we're looking at them to follow Jesus. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. That's a very important piece to discipleship. We need to know where we're headed, and if we don't have clear direction, you might disciple somebody into being, doing the same job as you do, having the same type of work, but does that make them more into Christ likeness? All right, here I found this picture online. I thought that's pretty neat. Discipleship, and discipleship has to do with growth and becoming like somebody, like Christ in this case. At the bottom of that picture, it says, engage, equip, encourage, and edify. And I think those are very important pieces to discipleship. Engaging with somebody, learning to know them. You can't really disciple somebody if you don't know them, if you don't have contact with them. So engaging with somebody, equipping somebody, giving them some teaching that's useful. Encourage, as they use those tools that you've equipped them with, encouraging them. Keep going, don't give up. And edifying. You edify one another as you serve the Lord together. And so I think that's some good stuff there. All right. Can you think of examples of discipleship? What are some examples of discipleship you know from history, from the Bible? And the easy ones, Jesus had disciples, and that's true. But there's more. There's more examples, and I'd like to hear. As you think about discipleship, think of those examples.
Paul and Timothy.
Okay, yeah.
Elijah and Elisha.
Sure.
Philip and the Ethiopian.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Moses and Joshua.
Good ones. And the interesting thing about some of those that you mentioned, Paul and Timothy, it came to the point where Paul was no longer involved. And Timothy was taking the lead. Elijah and Elisha came to the point where Elijah was taken away, and Elisha took that position. And yeah, that's valuable things to think about. Any more examples?
A lot of notorious characters in history had disciples who went on to do a lot of awful things themselves.
That's true. The bad thing, at certain points, there's bad things that happen because people were following others. In today's terminology, we might use the term mentorship. That would be a term that we would use, that I'll use interchangeably with discipleship. All right, here we go. Discipleship in you. Let's think about what you experienced. These three questions, I'll lump them together. Who discipled or mentored you in your life? What drew you to allowing the discipleship process to take place? And were there steps which took you into this relationship? For all of you, is there somebody who you were a disciple of other than Jesus? Another person that discipled you in some way? And I think, just a note to go with this, I think as we consider the way it was in our lives, I think that helps us to understand how we can better disciple others. What was helpful? what was a hindrance. So, who discipled you? Anybody want to throw out a name or throw out some information? Come on in, come on in, come on in. There's a few chairs around here. We're kind of just having a discussion, so feel free to jump in. There's a couple of chairs up here, there's a couple others back there, a couple against the wall. You guys want to grab some of those chairs and bring them over here, please. Okay, back to the question, well, who discipled or mentored you in your life?
High school teachers.
Okay. Do you have any stories you want to relate to that, Ryan?
I remember a time where my high school teacher just took me aside and took an interest in where I was at in my life, and he wouldn't have had to. It's not like I was in trouble. It's just in a specific way, just wanting to help me grow.
Good. Okay. And that meant a lot, didn't it?
Yeah.
What about the rest of you guys and girls? Who discipled you or mentored you?
I had a guy in church, an older guy in church that kind of was just there to listen and to help and to take steps through my life. That it was a mentor for me.
Okay, good.
I think a lot of us desire to be mentored, to be discipled, to have that person above us, but it's really, really hard to seek it out when you're the disciple. It's hard to seek out someone that will mentor you. So a lot of times, it's really helpful when people seek out people to be their disciples. So I think we need to be the ones that ask them if they want to talk. You're not going to ask for it if you're a disciple.
We don't realize the power that in us as relating to others.
Most people want it.
And yeah, people are interested in it. A lot of times we don't realize the effect we can have on another life. We kind of discount it's just me. And we need to be aware of that yes, we do have something to offer. So, just the second question: what drew you to allowing the discipleship process to take place? And any response on that? Welcome. Come in. Are there more chairs back there? There's a couple chairs sprinkled around here yet. Hey, you get front row seats. Here, Anna, come on here. There's 4 seats in the front here. Grab them. I kind of wanted this to be like a big circle, but I'm not sure that's going to work. So I do want interaction. I do like hearing from you guys and girls here. For those that just came in, we're talking about our personal experiences with discipleship, how it happened maybe in our lives, people who discipled us, and looking at what was good and what wasn't good about that. What were kind of the fourth heading, or the third heading on this row here? What were you discipled into, and how did that impact you? And was it a formal or informal process? Was it something you had meetings every week, or was it something that's just more informal, just kind of happened with interaction? And in your opinion, what works better, formal or informal? There's pros and cons to that. So, yeah, I'd like to hear some response on that.
I got mentored by a guy by the name of Rich. Some of you might know, Agora Christian Fellowship in Columbus. I spent a winter with him, very informal, but that's where the passion of the children's ministry came directly from him.
Wow.
I didn't even know before going down there to work. It was one of them times and situations where God placed it, and I was
Good.
I think in an informal situation, people are quicker to let down their guard and relax relax and be able to just truly live in it, but at the same time, it has to be purposeful. Sometimes informal you lose a sense of purpose in it, and that's not going to be effective. If you're the one discipling, yeah, it works well to be in an informal setting, but you have to be very purposeful with it.
Take the opportunity when it's there.
Yeah.
And plant the seed that needs to be planted. And sometimes it's not easy. That's one of the things about discipleship. It gets yucky. You kind of get into the inner workings of people's lives, and you find out the brokenness, the problems that are there. And we can all look pretty good when we dress up and we go to church. But when you really get to know somebody, that's when the truth comes out. And it's not always so great. All right, as we bring this more into a ministry setting, as you think about discipleship, what are you hoping to accomplish? What's the goal?
Seeing more disciples.
Okay. Reproduction of disciples, yeah, producing more and more. Anything else?
Growth.
Growth, okay. Having them move from one, where they're at today to a deeper relationship with Christ. Anything else?
I think about what Jill was, I think it was last night you were sharing, where we had the disciple to teach them to, it's kind of, one of my goals is to work myself out of my job. I mean, to train people to do what I was doing so that, like when Joel said, like when we leave, we're not teaching them to disciple. When we're done, nothing will happen. Yeah, the end goal is to work myself out of my job, I guess.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more later, and that's an important point. How do you view what you're doing? Is it for me? Is it mine? Or is there something bigger going on here? All right. If you're successful, what will your disciples look like? What will they be involved in? Give that some thought. How do you know if your disciples are progressing? Are there goals? Are there celebrations when a goal is reached? And just a little word of caution about this whole goals and celebrations. Sometimes when you're working with people, they see the celebration, they say, I want the celebration. And so they'll achieve the goal, but yet it's not part of that. If you set a parameter, if you read your Bible every day, well, that's something that a disciple should be doing. If you're a disciple of Christ, you should be studying God's Word. You should be learning to know Christ in a deeper way. And reading the Bible is one of the ways that can happen. And so you set a goal like that, but they only do it for the reward. And that's not where we should be at as Christians, that we're just out for the reward. That's selfishness, not servanthood. Any responses on these questions? If you're successful, what's the outcome going to look like, and what goals there? All right, if not, how do you choose disciples? How do you choose disciples? How do you make that decision that this is somebody you spend some time with and invest in? How's that done? Or is that
God
just
has divine appointments for us.
okay? Sometimes it feels like God is just placing somebody in your path and says, here you go. And that's a great point. This should not be done just, this guy likes the same thing that I like, and so we're just going to... And that's an entry point sometimes, and that's a connecting point. But there's sometimes God brings people in a way that's supernatural, and you're like, whoa, this is kind of neat. And that's a good part of having disciples in the Christian faith, because there's somebody at work that's much greater than us. So we're putting those appointments together. One of the things in this book here, he calls this a youth funnel. Well, that's the term I use. He called it the funnel effect or whatever. he talks about in youth ministry, children's ministry. You have, at the top here, you have the pool of humanity, all the people that are out there. And then the next group you have, so here we have what? How many billion people in the world? 7 billion, 8 billion, 6 billion? Well, billions of people in the world, okay? Pool of humanity. And the pool of humanity you might interact with might be a neighborhood around your church or a specific area. So you have all those people in that area. Maybe it's 3,000 people in that area. And then out of that, you have a Bible school, or you have a Bible study, or you have some sort of project at your church. And there's 100, 200, 75 people that show up. And some of them come for a variety of reasons. They show up because their friends came. They show up because there's girls there. They show up because there's guys there. And I hope that's not why you're here this weekend. But the fact of the matter is, there's people that show up at your church. Now, how many of them are really interested in growing? How many of them want to go deeper, or are they just there because it's a lot of fun? And I'm not saying church shouldn't be fun. I think we should enjoy getting together, and it should be a good experience as we worship with other Christians. But if we're only looking for fun, you can go and find fun at the bowling alley or mini golf, or in our case, Body Zone, where there's ice skating up in Reading, or there's all kinds of places you can go to have fun. And if the church is only fun, we're missing a key element. And so out of that group that comes, you'll find some that there's more interest than just being there. They're looking for something. And you find out of that group that there's some that they want to grow. And then out of this group, you'll find some that they want to be disciples. They want to go deeper yet. They want to learn to know this Jesus that's being talked about. They want to dig in more. And then out of that group, there's some that'll develop. They won't just follow Christ, but they're going to try to work on developing themselves into a more intimate relationship with Christ. And finally, the deepest level is the multiplier, the ones that are those disciples which go back out there and bring others in and start working to bring others into the church and multiply your group and make it bigger. And I just thought this was a pretty good description that he uses in this book. As you think about finding young people to disciple, it's important you're not just, this guy shows up at church, this will be great. Does the person really have an interest in becoming like Christ, or growing in his spiritual walk? Or is it just somebody that's going to fill your time up and not be serious about it? And I think, talked about divine appointments. Jesus is a very big part of this. Asking God to reveal where do we focus our energies as a group, or as personally with others. And I think that's it's important to think about people's level of involvement stuff. Well, there's some more stuff on the slides coming up here. I call this necessary elements for discipleship. Things that we need to have in our life and be clear about if we're going to be discipling others. Know what you're leading people to. Do you have a passionate relationship with Jesus Christ? What does Jesus mean to you? If you expect somebody to be your disciple and to be like you, a couple of little questions here that I have. Is your level of commitment one that is contagious? If your disciples' relationship with Jesus is like yours, would you be glad or sad? If the people that you're working with would turn out to be a Christian just like you, would that be good or bad? So if your relationship, if my relationship with Christ is lacking, you can't expect those that you're trying to disciple to somehow magically straighten that all out and do the right things, and the wrong things you're doing, just forget them. we need to live out an authentic Christian life. Another question to ask yourself: are you willing to stick with your disciples? It shouldn't be something that you start up and then give up quickly. It's something that you need to be willing to stick with them. And there's going to be times, like I said, it's not going to be pretty. There's going to be things happening that you don't like. You don't like to deal with. But are you willing to stick at it and work at it? Another thing, have a vision for your disciples. Can you see them as fellow church members, or maybe ministry leaders, or people that work with you in whatever type of ministry you're involved in, or co-workers, or possibly, like Lance said, one day even taking your spot? And we'll talk a little bit more about how we view ministry. That's an important thing. If we somehow think this is ours and we try to keep it for ourselves, that can hinder disciples, people getting involved and taking part. Understanding this is a growth process. That picture I showed you of discipleship, it showed a plant, a little plant, and a plant with some leaves, and a plant with bigger leaves, and basically a whole plant was the last picture. It's a growth process. You didn't become what you are overnight. Your relationship with Christ has changed and grown and been kind of dynamic throughout the years. And don't expect it to be any different with somebody else you're working with. Ultimately, you still aren't what you ultimately should be. Realize that. You're not perfect. None of you is perfect. And I'm not busting on you. I'm just giving you the reality check here. None of us is perfect. We all have growth that should happen in our life yet. And we're still in that growth process. And it's something that we need to be honest about. And this is one of my statements that I often tell people is be as patient with others as God has been with you. How many of you realize that God has been patient with you? Amen? Well, remember that as you work with other people, their shortcomings are no different than yours. You have some of those, you've had some of those, and some of those are things that maybe you've overcome over a 5-year process or 10-year process. Maybe you're still working at it. It's been 15 or 20 years. You're still working at it. Maybe you're not even 20 years old yet, but some of us are beyond that, a few years. But God has been patient with you in that process and reminded you again and again, this is something you're working on, something you're working on. And be as patient with others as God has been with you. Just keep that in mind. Another heading here. Your ministry and church position isn't only yours. Do you have the appropriate view of what you're doing? Are we possessive? Can we work ourselves out of a job and be okay with that? Jesus is the head of the church. How do you view your ministry and your outreach and those type of things that you're involved in? Is it something that it's yours? This is what I do. Is there room for others? And those are tough questions. Some of us, we kind of get comfortable with what we're doing. And it's kind of fun. And we do it weekly or bi-weekly, or we're involved with it yearly, different things. But remember, Jesus is the head of the church. And he has lots of people. And there might be somebody that you're ministering to now that will take your position one day. And be all right with that. God has something else for you. It's not like he's going to, send you out to retirement or anything like that. Maybe that's where you're headed. I don't know. But we need to be okay with that. That there's other people that God is calling to fill the roles that we're filling today. And it's an adjustment, but it's all right. As others come into Christ's family, do we make room for them and the variety they bring? There's diversity in Christ's family, and it's a good thing. Diversity brings us harmony and songs. There's 4 parts, not just one. Diversity brings us the colors in the rainbow. There's multiple colors, and it's beautiful. Rainbow is beautiful, but if it was just one green streak, it wouldn't be nearly as nice as multiple colors that we get on a rainbow. And so God has that in his family for a purpose. And it's better for all of us. Going a little bit further with that, understanding that Jesus' family is diverse. Your disciples will be different than you. And be okay with that. It's not going to be, they're not going to be little, clones of you. They're going to bring some diversity. How many of you have parents in here? Parents? Got a variety of parents. Children. They're your children, right? They're different, right? Than you and your wife. They bring their personalities. They bring their, and it's good. But it also is bad. Sometimes they bring things that you don't like, and then they get punished or whatever. But it's a good thing. That's what makes the family complete when we learn to work together. The church is described as a body. There's many parts, different functions, but one purpose. There's a reason for the diversity. One thing here that I just added warning, diversity does not mean sin. And in today's culture, it's a diverse culture, and you hear all these words that people throw out there about diversity. There are things that are sin that shouldn't be part of Jesus' family. And don't be hoodwinked into accepting sin in because it's diverse. That's a part that should not be part of your group or your church. All right. Talked about this a bit, the divine appointment thing. Ask Jesus to lead you into this process. If you're interested in working with somebody one-on-one, discipleship, ask Jesus to lead you there. Ask him to bring the right person. Ask him to work in your heart, that you'd have the right motives for discipleship. The people you're working with are not projects, and don't let them feel like that. If you do that, you probably won't have too many people following you, because none of us want them to feel like a project. You know, I'm my pastor's project. How would that be? Would you like that? Wouldn't work very good. And ask Jesus for a love for him and his people. You know, these are people that he wants to draw closer to himself, and you might be the vessel, you might be the conduit that brings them into a closer relationship. Ask him to build that love in your heart for them. People can see if you're genuine. If you're not genuine, they're not going to want to listen. It's not going to be helpful. Also, necessary for discipleship. This is moving to the other person now. A lot of that first part had to do with us, in our heart, what we're doing. But you need a willing disciple. Has the person, if you're thinking about this or you've been considering this, you know, the one-on-one relationship type thing, has the one you're thinking about discipling shown interest and been consistent in their spiritual growth? Have they shown some steps towards the steps that they can take? Have they taken those steps? How do you think about that? How do they respond to instruction and correction? And maybe in the discipleship process, that's something that can be worked on. But that's an important part. If you're going to disciple somebody, if you're supposed to be a teacher, there's going to be wrong beliefs, wrong things that they have, that they've been taught by their parents or by their friends or whatever. And those things, some of those things are going to have to be deconstructed and torn down. And how will they respond to those type of things? And are they willing to change? A disciple needs to be one who's willing to be taught if they're going to learn and become something else. Do they have a desire for this? Are they interested in being a disciple? You know, sometimes we think everybody needs to be a disciple. True, but if people are saying, no, I don't want to, or you're beating your head against the wall if you try to make a disciple out of somebody who doesn't want to be. Here I put custom fit your discipleship process. Think about the disciples you have and customize your approach to their needs, abilities, and desires. One size does not fit all. And as you think about, the children, the youth, whoever you're dealing with, ministering to, remember that they are unique people, and they are different than you in a lot of ways, and that's all right. Make sure as you listen to them, hear what they're saying. You know, I think about that. This goes back 7 or 8 years. One of my brother-in-law was saying, this one teacher, he knows everything about sports. And I knew the teacher personally, and I'm like, I didn't really know he was into sports that much. He said, he was telling us about, it was, Mavericks or Heat, basketball or something. Well, as I listened to my brother-in-law talk, I realized that his teacher was learning about sports so he could connect with his students on that level. And I'm sure his class time went better because he showed interest in some of the things they were interested in. And so as you think about discipling others, think about you might need to learn some new things in order to be a good disciple, a good teacher to them. And find out their interests and find out where do they fit in God's kingdom? There's room for them. Where do they fit? And build on those things which they in the places they fit. Nothing worse than a square peg in a round hole. All right. Include the basics in your discipleship thing. If you're going to do something, if we're going to grow to be like Christ, we need to have a devotional life, spending time with Him. And if you are discipling someone else, share together about Jesus and your relationship with Him. What have you learned about Jesus, being His disciple? What have you learned about Him, and how has that changed your life? And what are the struggles you face? In the last group, when we had a discussion about discipleship, one thing that they mentioned about the people that discipled them was authenticity. The people that they were drawn to were ones that were honest about their struggles, and honest about that they had struggles. You know, a lot of times in ministry, kids look at us and they're like, oh, wow, I could never be like that. And we're somehow, in their minds, we're set so far beyond where they could go or achieve. And that's not the way it should be. We're all on this journey towards Christ. If we're Christians, we're all on this journey growing in His likeness. And we're just at different spots. And each of us, if we're honest, would say, yes, we have struggles. Yes, we have things that we need to work on. And so we need to be honest with those that we're discipling about the struggles that we face. Pray together and encourage personal times of a personal prayer life. Some of those things are tough because sometimes young people come into your group and they expect you as a leader to lead me, take me, carry me. And if you want to be like Christ, I can't make you be like Christ. It's something that has to change within your heart to do that. And that doesn't come just by accident. It comes through study, and it comes through learning to know Christ and personal prayer times. And yeah, a variety of things that can lead us into that. And if we're not helping them through that process, there's parts of that are going to get missed and not be missed altogether and not done. Along with this, accountability. How much do you stay in touch with your disciples, the people that you're working with? Is growth happening is growth happening or taking place in a measurable way? And if you notice things, let them know. Say, I noticed that you were more patient with your brother. That was always a problem. You would get angry, and you were more patient with your brother. Something's changing here, and I'm excited to see that. I can see Christ at work in you. Let them know. And if you see something happen, say, let's talk about that. What took place there? You were saying you're working on that anger thing, and I just saw you flip your lid at your mom. Why? Let's talk about it. And accountability. You know, when they say there's something we'll work on, stick with them and have them stick with you on things that you say you want to work on. And stay in touch with one another. Accountability on both levels. You to your mentor. So I hope that each one of you are in a discipleship relationship. That there's somebody that you're, whether it's somebody from ministry, pastor, or somebody else that you're accountable to. But also, as you work with others, that there's accountability between you and the people you're discipling. I think it's important. You know, we can only go as far as we've gone. And we can only take people as far as we've gone with Christ. And it's important that we're practicing some of these things in our life before we try to get others to do it as well. This here section I've titled Building Discipleship into Ministry. And how do we do that? Number one, put a primary focus on Jesus Christ. Study the Bible, pray, and serve God together. Plan activities that help you discern who is a willing disciple and target those who are showing deeper spiritual interest. Don't have unruly sixth graders at an in-depth Bible study. Right? So, and I'm not saying you need to plan all kinds of different activities, but there are times when you do your activities. There's activities that we plan that are just kind of for everybody. You know, a dodgeball game, a gym night. Those are kind of in. But if you're going to have a Bible study, an in-depth Bible study or sharing time, there's some people that from your ministry you just don't want to have there. It's not going to work. They're going to detract more than they're giving. And so, as you think about that, plan activities that help you discern who's a willing disciple, and then work with those disciple people in a deeper way. The ones that you believe do want to go deeper and want to become more and more like Christ. Not just the ones that are there for the fun, the food, and friends. And here I put it may start as a group thing, but probably it will end up as a personal one-on-one thing. A lot of times, you know, as ministry, we plan activities, but I look at a lot of the activity stuff as that's a stepping stone to the relationships that need to happen for change. And I'm so thankful for a bunch of people at church who put time into the young people in Reading. That's where the change is really taking place. It hasn't, you know, you saw, some of you were here earlier, I showed you pictures of us making boats. And that was a fun time. We laughed about that stuff. But, you know, that's not where they learned about Jesus. They learned about Jesus in that one-on-one interaction when you were patient with them and they didn't deserve it. Or when you would have had opportunity to rip somebody off and you were honest. Those are the times that they saw Jesus and they knew that there was something different. That's and a lot of times we try to put discipleship in a box and try to make it real formal, but I think it happens just in daily life. They see your response, they see how you act, they see what you do, and your Christian life makes a difference. I figure both are needed. The group setting where we work together as a team, but also the personal one-on-one stuff. Keep another thing that's important if we're going to have discipleship in ministry. Keep this as a focus of the ministry. A lot of times when we start out, we want to work with people, and we start out doing that, and we're like, now it would be cool to have a Bible school. So we have a Bible school, and then we're like, it'd be really cool to do all kinds of neat things with our Bible school. And I'm not saying you should, but we do all kinds of things that bring a lot of people in. But how many of those things lead people into that deeper personal relationship with Jesus Christ? We can be sidetracked by what we're doing, and we forget that, yes, we want to disciple people. And the discipleship is a lot of times the hard work, the dealing with people in their situation. And it's something that we need to keep talking about as ministry teams. Yes, we are here to disciple and work with people on a personal level. And so, don't be sidetracked by gadgets and gizmos, but keep your focus on reaching the lost and a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Remember your experience as a disciple. This will help you discern what might work for others. We talked about that a little bit already. Plan for others to be involved even in small ways. Give them ownership. Allow them to try and fail. Hopefully not fail, but allow them to try things. If you are going to somehow take these people and say, I'm going to tell you what to do and I'm going to make you do it and we're going to do it right, you're going to probably squash their spirit. And they will feel that this is your thing. And you are only concerned about the Bible study or the church or whatever it is. And they're not important. Give them some ownership. The quickest way to kill disciples is to make ministry your thing and them a project. Don't do that. You won't have disciples very long. They're not a project. They're another person in the same journey as you are. And acknowledge that and walk with them. Don't put discipleship in a box. I talked about this a little bit already, but it happens many places and takes on many forms. It happens at Bible study, at work projects, prayer times, casual meetings, breakfast together, or even just mountain trips and youth retreats, those type of things. It happens in all those settings. Don't just put discipleship in a box and say, wow, it has to be this or it has to be that. Allow Christ to lead you in those times. And when those divine appointments come, take that opportunity and plant the seed, because it'll grow. And it'll become something that you never imagined it would. And finally, discipleship is a heavenly calling. Jesus came and told his disciples, I've been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore, go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I believe Jesus' heart is in the idea of relating to people in a personal way. He had 12 disciples. One of them flunked out big time. Don't be surprised if you relate to people and it doesn't go the way you might want it to. Failure is part of it. And as much as we don't want to fail, as much as we want people to be successful in their Christian life, doesn't always work out that way. And I believe Jesus, talking to his disciples, as we are his disciples here, pass it on. Go and tell others. Make disciples of all nations. Bring them into his family as his followers. Any comments or questions? That's the end there, folks. We need to. That's all, folks. They're not quite. Any comments or questions throughout there along with this? Things we want to discuss. All right, if not, thanks a lot. You guys were a great group. No disruptive kids. I guess we don't have any unruly sixth graders here. So it's pretty easy. Have a great day. Good having you all here.